Good afternoon and welcome to episode 4 of the Rieg
And AD?
Wedding Show. Today is all about jewelry and wedding rings.
Yes.
But before we can talk about jewelry, maybe first a little bit of a personal story. So when myself and AD were starting to talk about getting engaged, obviously we were discussing engagement rings. And I got politely told that she doesn't want an engagement ring, she wants a trampoline.
Yes, I'm not really very much into jewelry. I do appreciate beautiful rings and beautiful jewelry, but me myself don't like wearing it. So I begged Rieg to buy me a trampoline for our engagement, which I don't know. I'm sure a trampoline is cheaper than a ring, but yeah, I got a ring. It was very nice, but I got the trampoline a couple of months later, and that made me actually much more happier than the ring. Yeah, but that's my story.
Yeah, the trampoline was on your next birthday.
Yes.
Yes. The problem for me was it's a bit difficult to sneak a trampoline into your pocket and surprise someone. So the ring had to do. So obviously there's a very good reason for an engagement ring. Hence today's discussion with Richard and Burnett from Manser Jewellery and Titanium studio.
Yes, I must say, if they were in the game when we got married,
It might have been a different story.
I might still wear a ring because their rings are so unique. It's not normal jewelry.
But we let them.
We'll let them.
I think there's one more thing that we need to clarify. Both of us are not wearing rings. So
yes.
Even though we're very happily married, we're not wearing rings.
Married.
So there's a little bit of a history to it. And kind of when we started to become fully professional photography business, about 12 years ago, the rings had to make way for extra camera lenses.
Okay, but can I just say, my ring was in the safe for years. I didn't even wear it. So it was actually it was a waste. We didn't wear our rings, so we decided on what do you call?
Well, the rings were exchanged for camera lenses. Let's put it that way. So we're not really a very good example, but from our point of view, if you are planning to start a photography business, maybe consider that. Otherwise, get your fiancé the most beautiful engagement ring you can get.
Yes, and if someone asks me, but no one can see you married, I've got my husband's name here and my children's names forever. So yeah.
And mine's here.
No, you're gonna get one with all our names on.
Okay, so let's quickly do one quick tip.
Yeah, out of the photography point of view concerning the rings and the jewelry. Yeah.
So the rings always photograph beautifully, but you need a few minutes of time with them. And I think my advice to any bride or groom out there is when you're planning your wedding day, make sure that the rings are either at the groom or at the bride beforehand. Make sure your photographer knows where they are and make sure they're easily accessible. It's happened way too many times that maybe one of the nieces or nephew bring in the rings and the ring is already with their parents and they are getting ready at a different location or something like that. So it's absolutely essential to make sure that the rings are close by beforehand. They're easily accessible. They're not packaged as such that you can't open them.
Yeah.
And then it allows us those few moments to just take stunning photographs of the ring, which makes for beautiful inlays in the final wedding album.
Yes.
So it's worth just taking that small extra step.
Richard is the one that specializes in photographing the jewelry. He's much better than me with it. He always does it with a macro lens, and it is a photo that I always use in a wedding album. It is always beautiful, especially if you have a little handcrafted box or
branded or
pillow or
something with
anything
names
that's
on.
customized.
Or unique to the wedding.
Everything nowadays is unique to the wedding. So he's got the skills to do that. So I usually recommend for our couples that the rings are with the groom.
But even if it's at the bride, it's fine. I can quickly go there. It's just knowing where they are and making them easily accessible and making sure they're not with someone who's not close to them.
A random person.
Exactly. So, okay. So now it's time to get Richard and Burnett on a Zoom call. So we will be back shortly with them via Zoom.
Hi, Richard. Thank you so much for the time for joining us. We appreciate it so much.
How's it?
Hey, how's it
Long
going?
time no see.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What time is it now in Gauteng?
It's lockdown time.
Day 50 and 70 and 20, nothing.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard, can you tell us a little bit more about your business, the two legs of the business, Manser Jewellery and Titanium Studios?
Yeah, sure. So, as AD said, we basically got the two legs of the business. We've initially started with Manser Jewellery, and that's purely born out of my love for design and being from a design background. We started very small, started with a couple of friends and things like that, designing jewelry, rings, and effectively it turned out to a business. And from that, it got to a point we couldn't find anything in the market to offer guys. And, we've got a very big male fan base as well. And we effectively started Titanium Studios specifically in order to offer guys as much range. These days Titanium Studio has grown by so much that we almost offer more range for the guys than what we do for the ladies. So that's kind of got to that point. We've branched out a little bit since we've last spoken, and we've now got we're one of the only, I would say one of the only, there's a couple of guys doing it, but one of the I would say the premium moissanite importers in South Africa as well. So we offer, and I think we'll get into moissanites and what they are and how that, affects the costs. And we now import that specifically for the trade as well. So we offer that, to clients and to the trade. And then we've got the family crest rings, which we now starting to do our own castings and things like that as well, which is also a bit of a European trend that's now coming more to South Africa as well.
You guys obviously are forerunners with most of the trends and not looking at the South African market and more taking from the European or overseas market because they are the market leaders.
Yeah, that's correct. I think especially with with costs and things like that coming into play. There's a lot of things that we have a look at in the overseas market also because, when I say costs coming into play, we've got a lot of overseas clients now purchasing from South Africa, purely having a look at what the rand-dollar exchange rate is doing. Although it might seem very expensive for South African clients buying jewelry here, compared to anywhere else in the world, it's actually very cheap. And we're now seeing that trend where we're growing a client base from, I would say predominantly from the US, but also from European markets, where people are now starting to purchase jewelry in South Africa and then ship it across. It's been for a while where you get the Eastern markets, where the Eastern markets used to come to South Africa and purchase raw materials like gold and diamonds, and then take that purely because of the cost as well. But we're now seeing, a lot of fully fledged, people finding us on social media, purchasing rings locally, and we're shipping it across purely because it's a lot more cost effective.
Richard, I think specifically back to our brides and grooms, what kind of advice would you give them when starting to select or buy rings? Because I mean, it's not a cheap thing. I think it's not something that it's a big part of a wedding budget. Let's put it that way. Yes. So what's the best advice you can give them out there in terms of the process, and how can you guys assist them?
Time-wise.
Yeah. When do you? If I want to get engaged, can I come to you and basically have my ring in 2 weeks' time, or do I need to give you a month's notice? I think a lot of the guys don't really think about that. You suddenly decide you want to get engaged, and then I need to get a ring. So maybe a little bit of guidance there in terms of for the guys specifically, but also for the ladies. What's best practice? Let's put it that way.
Thanks, Rieg. So I'm going to split it up into the two different sections. I think that let's have a look at the ladies' rings first, and then kind of move over to the guys' ones. The first, I would say, these days, the most important thing playing a part in the manufacturing of the ladies' rings is budget. A lot of the guys, especially with the COVID-19, a lot of guys, some people have lost their jobs, some people have businesses, but the businesses aren't doing that well. So there's a couple of things that we have to look at for the ladies' rings that's going to make an impact on the end result. Most ladies that we find have a Pinterest board filled with rings of ideas that they already want. So I think those are the most important things that we need from a client in order to assist them is, send us the design, or send us an idea of the design that you want, and send us a budget. It's our job then to take the design and take the budget and basically put those two together. Some people, the reality is some people do have a bigger budget, and some people can go for things like diamonds and platinum rings, which end up being very expensive purely because of the exchange rate. But some people have the ideas of this type of ring, but they really only have a fraction of the budget. There are ways and means to get to the end result by playing around with different stones, playing around with different metals, playing around with, there's a few small tweaks that you can have make on a specific design to halve the budget. Purely looking at, if you have a look at, for example, the diamond ring, you can purchase a 1 carat diamond. These days cost you anywhere from 80 to 100,000 Rand. But you have a look at a half a carat diamond. A half a carat diamond, you can do the same design in, perhaps by doing a halo, putting stones around it. So create the visual effect that it's a very impressive looking ring. And it will cost you a third of the price of the other ring. Part and parcel of what we've done with bringing moissanites into the country. So that's a very real trend happening all over the world because of affordability. Moissanite is the closest thing to a diamond that you'll find. Now, a lot of people want this 1 carat diamond, but the reality is they can't afford it. So the next best option would be using a stone like a moissanite. So a moissanite it's still a relatively expensive stone, purely because the manufacturing, the way that they manufacture the stone is quite complex. It's a lab-grown stone, but it's the only stone in the world that's almost as hard as what a diamond is. So it's almost got an unlimited lifetime. It has a lifetime guarantee. It's scratch resistant. It's the only stone as well that has a higher refraction rate compared to a diamond. So, for any guy on the street looking for a very impressive looking ring, but with a smaller budget, consider something like a moissanite, because you won't see the difference. That's the reality. Any guy on the street will not see the difference between a real diamond and a moissanite. The only drawback I would say between a moissanite and a diamond is that a moissanite has no real resale value. It's good to create an impressive looking end result, but if you want something that has that intrinsic material value, then obviously nothing would replace the real thing. All right. So that would be part of the trends I would say happening. Another thing to perhaps, if you've got time on your hands, is to keep track of the exchange rates and the gold price. Now is a very expensive time to purchase jewelry. I hate to say that, but that is the reality of it. So if you've got a year to plan and the Rand-dollar exchange rate would inevitably move negatively, obviously the sooner that you purchase a ring, the better, because it will just get more expensive as the Rand-dollar exchange rate changes. The gold price is another thing to consider. Is the gold price kind of moves up and down. that the gold price in dollar terms moves up and down. The gold price in rand terms is kind of just on the up. And we don't see a reduce in the gold price, especially in rand terms, in the near future. So if your idea is to get engaged within the next 6 to 12 months, now is a very good time to purchase a ring, because in 12 months' time, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be substantially more expensive, as the economy obviously feels the impact of this coronavirus. Another thing to consider is the quality. So a lot of people send us pictures of mass-produced retail type rings. That they see on, a couple of names to have a look at that have a very good place in the market. Your typical companies that you would find in any mall, your Stearns, American, Swiss, these type of rings, and they fulfill a very needed place in the market. But you can't compare these type of rings with, say, rings from a very upmarket company. The quality is simply different. The manufacturing style is different. So that's one thing to take into consideration is, much like anything else, and I think your industry as well, is you kind of get what you pay for. If you're willing to spend just that little bit extra, your end result will inevitably be a lot better. I think the other thing is custom. A lot of people think that custom rings are more expensive than something purchased in a shop. It's not necessarily true, because a lot of the time, we don't have the retail expenses that a lot of the shops have. So, you can most likely get something that's substantially better if it's custom made, rather than settling for something that you would find in a shop, purely because we then discount all the retail costs and profits from that. All right.
Rich, and for the guys specifically, what would your advice be for them on the Titanium Studio side?
Cool. So, in terms of things that we do for the guys, I mean, we continuously try and push the boundaries for guys' rings. We literally try and do something that you cannot find in any shop anywhere in South Africa. Again, obviously the budget comes into play. It's some guys prefer something that's very plain and simple, and something that's hard wearing, in which case we'd suggest go for a plain titanium ring or something that's very hard. On the other hand, is if you want something that's very unique. I mean, we've started doing things like Damascus steel rings. We do meteorite inlay rings, so proper fallen star type stuff. Meteorite stuff. I mean, that's something you simply can't find in a shop. We try and customize every single ring for every single person. So again, we have a look at what you want to spend. We have a look at your personality. And then we try and kind of marry those two together to give you something that you won't necessarily find in any shop. There's a big trend in the guys' rings towards black rings. And the one thing that unfortunately in the South African market is absolutely flooded with cheap China kind of made rings. Now, the problem that we have with something like that is it's extremely cost effective. The problem is it doesn't last. Especially with the black rings, there is no such thing as a black metal. But there are ways around that to make something more durable. We import a specific metal called zirconium, and zirconium is the only metal that you can treat to actually turn black. And something that you can maintain in the long run to stay black. So, what we would suggest is, specifically for the guys, is ideally tell us what you want, and then we'll come back to you and we'll say to you how to get that end result, but in a more durable, long-lasting. Because if it's your wedding ring, you don't want the thing to last 2 to 3 weeks. So with the guys is we literally try and push the envelope when it comes to guys' rings. And that's something that we're born out of the need, is that you don't find things in South Africa. You don't find guys' jewelry or rings in South Africa. So the best way to sort that out was to actually start our own workshop to specifically cater for gentlemen.
Richard, what is the most unique rings? I mean, for our clients and the people who's watching, we're obviously gonna attach a URL or a connection to your website and everything. But what is the weirdest request that you've got concerning unique? Do we need a PG rating for this one?
I mean, there's weird, and then there's weird. there's acceptable weird, and then there's just weird. So if some of the people, we've literally seen it all. So I mean,
is it like client, doctor client confidentiality?
Look, so some of the weirdest ones that we've had in the last little while was we've had different rings for different body parts that we had to manufacture. I mean, that's not all people wear a ring on their fingers. We don't specialize in that, but that's definitely one of the far out ones. Other things that we do is, I mean, we don't only specialize in the wedding industry. I mean, we do other rings like, we recently did rings where we took ashes of someone and we had to inlay that into a ring for someone. We call those remembrance rings. We took the same ashes and we actually cast that in resin and we cast the stone out of it to set that into a ring for the lady. So, I mean, that's another thing. We had a lady send us a whole bunch of her hair to put into the guy's ring. There's some strange things out there. Okay. So that in terms of weirdness, that kind of
soul.
So basically, you're open for any suggestion.
We're open for absolutely everything. We're genuinely absolutely everything. Some of the more out there rings that we do are things like the gear rings, the watch gear rings, where we use old vintage watches. Some well over 100 years old, and we take actually the inner workings of the watch and we build that into a ring in an inlay.
Wow.
So we do that. We've got. We recently started. We partnered with a medical company who print body parts and screws and things like that to 3D print titanium. So we do things like the kintsugi ring, which is effectively it's a cracked titanium ring where we print it, we 3D design it, and we print it with all the cracks, and then we fill the cracks with either diamonds or gold or something like that.
Wow.
So we can really push the envelope when it comes to rings.
Okay.
We literally open for the weirder the better because it makes our job more interesting.
So it's really like a bespoke solution, and the only limit is your budget.
100%. I mean, we can't play in the market of the mass retail. I mean, that's not what we do. There's enough shops out there that focus on mass-produced rings. So every single ring that we make, ladies or gents, we aim to kind of help the client in every way, from the budget to the end result, and try and give them something that they're not necessarily going to find in a shop.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. That's why I always share you guys website photos and Facebook photos. I believe in you guys' business. I cannot wait for this episode to launch. I'm going to share it worldwide.
Richard, I think one last question, just in closing, what is the sort of ETAs or timelines that you need? I think just so that it's clear for the guys, if they need an engagement ring or they need a wedding ring or they need alterations done, how many weeks kind of do you need under normal circumstances for them to plan?
Okay, so the like with anything, it's like building a house. You can build a small 1-bedroom place relatively quickly, and then you end up with a big mansion that you can take a year to build. So it depends on what the client wants. I would say an estimation for an average type ring, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 weeks. Ladies ring, or gents ring as well. I mean, there are some of the bespoke solutions where, if a client wants a specific shape of a stone or a diamond or a moissanite cut, we can do things like that, but the technology is not available in South Africa. In which case we have very good connections overseas to do that. Okay. But then you obviously deal with your courier and the timelines with customs and things like that. So I would say at the very quickest for a ladies ring, between a week and 2 weeks. At the very longest, depending on how much customization the client wants, I would say between 5 and 8 weeks.
Okay. That's a very, very fast turnaround time.
Okay. Yeah. I just think a lot of people don't know. And the only time that they know is when they speak to their jeweler. So it's good to just give them that information in advance. Richard, so thank you very much. We're going to obviously list all your details below. And if you can, send us a few pictures of those rings so we can include it so everyone can have a look. It's obviously on your website as well, but I'd love to include 1 or 2 of them into the video as well.
Do you have a lockdown promo?
We actually do have on some of. No, we actually do. We have on some of the gents rings. We have the lockdown promo purely because we control everything from the metal right down to the end result. Okay. We unfortunately with the ladies rings, it's very difficult to have a lockdown promo purely because the rand dollar exchange rate, the gold price, the diamond price, the time it takes to import the raw materials or the stones, we don't have for the ladies rings, but for the gents rings, absolutely we do. Okay. That's more surrounding our zirconium ranges and things like that. But, we're always willing to chat.
Okay. Send an email.
Cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day. And regards to Burnett.
I will tell her. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Richard, thank you so much for your time. That was Richard Manser from Manser Jewellery and Titanium Studio, telling us a little bit more about their business. And we just want to thank him for his time.
I think we all learned something about jewelry. It's not just I want that one and you get it.
Obviously they specialize in that. We learned a lot as he was talking with us on Zoom.
It's the same as not just pressing the shutter button on the camera.
Yeah, that was very nice.
So Richard, thank you very much. And from our side, please remember to subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely important for us to grow the channel. And to incentivize everyone, we will be having a lucky draw the moment we reach 1,000 subscribers. So please share with your family, subscribe, ask them to subscribe. And then the prize will be a Rieg AD family lifestyle or couple shoot to the value of 3,000 Rand.
Awesome.
So all you have to do is just subscribe. And if you like our video, like it as well. And leave us a comment below if you've got any specific questions.
In Jeffreys, obviously.
Yeah.
The shoot is in Jeffreys on the beautiful beaches of Jeffreys Bay. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, until episode 5, see you again.
Arrivederci.